Hi guys, welcome to Learning Electronics Repair, and I have another curve tracer here. This is from AliExpress. This is a review sample which I requested. I didn't pay for this, but I'm not being paid to make this video, this review, so this is my honest opinion. Okay. The reason I ordered this one is because of all the interest I had in this one. So this is the curve tracer with the built-in display. I know quite a few of you have bought these, and I've been using this regularly since I had it. In my videos, you've seen that. It's a really good bit of kit, very useful. But it was mentioned there's a cheaper version of this, and that is this one. So the first thing you see, this doesn't have a screen. Okay, it comes with BNC to BNC cables, power supply. So I'm guessing this is a chargeable one, but I haven't looked. This actually has a power socket in it. The other one is battery powered. Looks like this one isn't. So this is an add-on to an oscilloscope. And the oscilloscope, we have two cables to connect to it, needs to operate in XY mode. Now the first thing to say about this is considerably cheaper than the one I reviewed previously. So let's take a look at that. And here is the item on AliExpress, so 45 euros, basically free shipping. The one I previously looked at was this one, so around 90 euros, free shipping. So about half the price. So let's see if it does the same job. I won't demonstrate the use of the curve tracer in this video. I did that in great depth with the other one, at least 2 dedicated videos. So if you want to know what the curve tracer does and how to use it, have a look in the video description here and you will find the links to those videos. I'm more interested to see how compatible this is with various oscilloscopes. I have quite a few here. Now the first thing I will say, you have to have a dual channel scope, okay, or quad I guess, but it needs 2 channels. And secondly, the scope has to support XY mode. I'll try it first on my analog scope, my very old, I bought this thing in 1993, Tektronix 465B. The power supply is a 24 volt. This is an American style one, wide input voltage, so that isn't a problem. This is probably my mistake. I ordered the wrong one, wrong option, but I have an adapter so we can get around that easily enough. I have this connected to my oscilloscope. The leads are quite short, so I can't get it into the center of the bench, unfortunately, so I'm using a different camera, but you guys can see. It doesn't actually specify any markings on here, which are the X and Y, but I figured it out from the trace. So this one here is Y, this is X, so XY, alphabetical order, I guess at least. We have the 2 probes and we have the ground. So at the moment it's on single channel, this one, so vertical short, horizontal open, which is what you'd expect from a curve tracer. Obviously a bigger display than we see on the other one with a little inbuilt screen. We'll just try a diode. It's a bit susceptible to putting your fingers on the probe, which the other one wasn't. Not that I noticed at least. So, yeah, diode. Transistor. This only comes with 3 leads, by the way. So if you want to compare 2 PCBs, you would have to connect basically from the ground of one to the ground of the other. With a crocodile clip lead, it's not a problem. Behaving as you would expect. Okay, and to probe on 2 PCBs to compare them, we'll connect this to ground, which on the PCB is here, and then I'll have to connect another lead. Okay, so I think, yeah, just this is the one that's working at the moment. Yeah, goes to vertical. So we can probe like so, but we can compare the 2. So we do that pressing AB. And you'll see that's flashing on and off. You can actually change the rate, and I can hear a relay in here. So this is working like the modified Hameg one, which I built. I put the project. I'll see if I can remember to link it to this video. So we can go to the same IC, same pin, and you can see we have the same trace. So whereas the other one always had the two traces superimposed, this is switching between them, and you can see the slight difference on that IC. Okay. In fact, no, it's the same now. Must have been a capacitor charging. So we can use this in the same way as the other tracer. Just slightly different in the way the display works, and turn the speed up. Yeah, look the same now. Capacitor was charging. Okay. So yeah, we can use it like we were using the other one, just slightly different in the operation, really. Yep, look the same. Okay. So yes, it works basically like the other one, just slightly different in the operation. Let me try this on some of the other oscilloscopes I have. Okay, so that is on the FNIRSI in XY mode. I actually had to ask AI how to do it. And it's working, but it's glitching. And you can see here in actual fact that according to the AI, intermittent diagonal lines, unfortunately a known issue with the FNIRSI 1014D. You're not alone, many users have similar problems, especially in XY mode, and it goes on. Software glitches, bugs in the firmware, low screen display, poor interpolation, display handling. Yeah, okay. So although I can use this, I'm not sure really how useful this is going to be. Let's try. Yeah, look, I'm not moving the probes or anything, but look, you see, it kind of works, I'll give it that. Yeah, okay. So not really suitable with the FNIRSI 1014D, and that's not a problem with the tester. This is much more related to this scope. Let's try my Rigol digital scope. Here's my Rigol scope. So we'll just connect one of the probes to ground. Yep, doing what you'd expect, switching between short and open. So let's try this one. So I'm on the same point on both PCBs. Try another pin. I see the occasional glitch, but this is much more stable. I would say this is usable. Let me see a slight difference on that one. For example, if I connect to a different place, we should get a completely different trace. Yeah, you can see there's a big difference because obviously it's a different pin, but simulating a fault, yeah. So apart from the occasional little glitch, I would say that is quite usable. Almost as good as the analog scope, to be honest. Okay, I have a few more scopes. Let me see how many of them are dual channel and we'll try them. Well, according to the AI, I'm using this a lot now. You can see that. Just faster than looking up user manuals. Looks like the 2C23T does support XY mode, but the challenge is that the user interface doesn't present a clearly labeled mode button or display mode button, which can make it a bit confusing. And then it gives me some from available documentation. Manual specs confirm the presence of XY mode, but the control for switching modes is not explicitly labelled. A long press of the select button toggles functions. Well, this thing doesn't have a select button. Okay, there's no button that says select unless that one. Long press doesn't seem to do anything. So I've tried long pressing on various buttons. Switch it off, back on. Don't seem able to get into the XY mode. So I'm going to say in this instance, if FNIRSI can't just tell me how to do it, why isn't it in the instruction manual? I'm not even going to spend my time trying to figure it out, because I shouldn't have to. Yeah, fair enough, I shouldn't have to. Okay, let's see what else I can find which has a dual channel. Okay, so I have the FNIRSI 2C53P here in XY mode. I'm sure I could position that central, but not really a problem for this demonstration. So if I connect both leads to ground, well, after a few seconds I get like a short. But if I put one lead on ground, it should be switching between horizontal and vertical lines, and it's doing like really crazy stuff. Let's go to this chip, so compare the two. I see that. Another pin. I see that. So it's showing me pretty much when they are the same, but somewhat glitchy. But if I go to something where it's different, it just goes like crazy stuff. So fail. Yeah, that will not do it. I'm not sure what the AI would think of that, because it's, well, give me that, that's a video link. Yeah, got it working, but when connecting the curve tracer to compare two PCB, it gives garbage display if the curve tracer probes have different curves. How to properly use the curve trace with XY mode. What not to do. Connect two separate curve tracers. I'm just going to say, my 40-year-old analog scope, tongue out, has no problem with the curve tracer and two probes comparing two PCB. Is this supposed to be progress? Is this supposed to be progress? In some ways, no, this is not progress. What you are seeing is one of the downsides of cheap digital scopes compared to analog gear, especially for nuanced application like curve tracing or live XY comparisons. And it tells me this is why the analog scope is better. Yeah, true analog signal path versus ADC software, XY mode real-time dual trace, emulated, seamless analog comparison, prone to anti-aliasing, display latency none, noticeable latency, simultaneous unbuffered inputs, some cheat. Your analog scope literally just plots voltage versus voltage. There you go. And then it goes on to say why these things struggle. Do you want to help modifying the tracer? Do you know, maybe this is something we can remember and come back and see what it suggests, okay? Or just say forget it and stick with the analog. Either answer is valid. I suggest I was going to try some more, so I said so far FNIRSI 1014D very glitchy, just about usable. I've told it that the 2C53P is garbage. I didn't put space in, but it was fine. Rigol DS1052E, pretty good, but not perfect. And it's saying exactly the kind of real-world comparison that cuts through marketing fluff. Thank you for sharing it, okay? It's learning. And here's a quick breakdown. Garbage, glitchy but usable, pretty good. Let me see if I have any more. Maybe one more we'll find. And we have this scope meter. So Tooltop ET829. This is also a dual channel scope. Does this have XY mode? So we can't test the curve tracer on that one. We can't use it with that one. So unfortunately, although this is a dual channel scope, it doesn't have an XY mode. So not all dual channel scopes have what you would consider to be a common and you could say essential function of a scope. So Tooltop, we can't try this one. So the big question, should you buy this one? Yeah, it's €45 less than the other one, basically half the price. And there are two answers to this really, and they'll depend on your circumstance. So we've seen that this works with some oscilloscopes. You need to have an oscilloscope, which will be a dual channel scope, that has an XY mode. In which case, connect this to the two inputs on your scope and you get the curve trace. And you can use this to compare two PCBs. This also has, by the way, this G input. This is an impulse or trigger. You saw that on the other one and I'll link the video. That has the same feature on this. So we can actually activate things like transistors and MOSFETs while we're testing. So all the features are there, but it does it in a slightly different way. So the one with the built-in screen, we see two traces, one superimposed on the other one, and both curve trace at the same time. This switches, yeah, we can alter the speed, we know that, but this switches between the two traces. And the reason it does that is not to save money or cost cutting when they made this. It's because it has to work that way. Your scope and XY mode use both channels, both traces. So it can only generate or display on the screen one curve trace. Yeah, and to enable you to compare between two PCBs or two components, you have to switch between the two. So that is a limitation of the scope, not a limitation or design consideration of this. You could argue maybe you could make this that use something like JFETs to do the switching rather than a relay. So it's silent in operation. It would still operate the same way, it just wouldn't go click, click, click. I didn't design it, I don't know how feasible it is to do that. I will say that any similar device to this I've seen works in the same way this one does, so that is probably the way to do it. Okay. But those slightly different ways of operating or displaying the curve trace will not affect the way you can use this. It will not affect the fault finding power of this. So if you have an oscilloscope that supports it, yeah, I mean, fine, save yourself some money, yeah. Okay, you have a bit of extra clutter with cables, whether you want them on your bench or not, your choice. They are BNC to BNC, they're not very long, but you can easily buy these and longer lengths or make them up, not a problem. The big question is, do you have a scope that will support this? So A, you need a dual channel scope, and B, it must have an XY mode. We know that. But C, the XY mode must actually work. It must function correctly. And that is something you need to find out if you are considering to buy one of these and you already have a scope you intend to use it with. You need to find out, does your scope support XY mode correctly? So Google, AI, reviews, whatever. You can basically test that yourself without one of these. For example, with two signal generators feeding the signal into the two inputs on your scope and display basically what's called a lysogist figure. Two audio signals or a stereo audio signal where there's wide separation of the stereo, so the signals are different, and that will produce a swirly pattern lysogist thing. And you can test the ability of your scope to display XY mode correctly before you buy. Okay, so there you go, guys. That's really the answer. It all depends on what type of scope you've got and how you feel about a bit more clutter of wires on your cable. Okay, so let me know down there. I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you all soon again on Linear Electronics Repair. Ciao for now, guys.